Hey YouTube, this is Emmy, and I'm here to do one of my weekly episodes called Emmy Reads to Your Face. This is the second episode, and I will be leaving a link to the first episode right, like, here in front of my face, hopefully. And if not, then I'll leave it in the crotch. But, we will be reading one chapter a week from this, Blood and Chocolate. It is my favorite book, but you don't have to like it. That's alright. I will also be playing one song in the background on all these episodes, and if you get bored of it, I'm really sorry. This week's song is Designed to Kill by Blood on the Dance Floor. Also, for those of you who saw my last video, I am still off the internet. I just, like I said in the video, I will be doing my weekly episodes, which are Percy Jackson, Religion of Percy Jackson, and this one, which is Emmy Reads to Your Face, and I'm about to read to your face. So, and because this is my second episode, I should do a little bit better than my last one. So, we'll see. Oh yes. Oh, future reference, this is by Annette Curtis Klause, or Klaus, however you pronounce it. So, without further ado, I don't do recaps, so if you really want to know what happened in the last chapter, go watch the last video. Okay, gotta fix my camera. The morning was tentatively warm, and the smell of early roses drifted over from the neighbor's yard. The day would be hot later. She was glad she decided to wear shorts. Not much school left now, Vivian thought as she walked down the tree-lined street. What will I do in the summer? Move, she hoped. Get out of this place. Hey, Viv! Sorry, I don't like this character. Hey, Viv! A lean, muscular figure peered out from behind a stone gate post, and her eyes widened briefly. Rafe? She said in a casual greeting, and kept on walking. If she hadn't been daydreaming, she would have sniffed him out. Rafe fell in beside her. She noticed that he now was now cultivating a goatee and mustache. He ran a hand through his thick, long brown hair and shifted his grip on the package wrapped in newspaper he carried under his one arm. Going to school? Some of us do. The five were more likely to be found hanging out by the diner around the corner from school or down by the river. Yeah! Woo! Two boys dropped from the roadside tree in a jingling of chains, hair flying. This time she did start slightly and cursed herself. She should have known the others were near. The twins, Willem and Finn, looked pleased with themselves. Round-faced Will slipped an arm around her waist and gave her a friendly squeeze. Didn't we scare you, did we? He asked, obviously hoping he had. You were such a puppy, Vivian said, removing his arm. He'd been her favorite of the twins as they were growing up. He was the sweeter and more predictable than his brother, but his affectionate gestures had lost a great deal of their innocence in the last year or so. Finn, the Gaunter twin, smiled sardonically. She was expecting the others now, so it came as no surprise when Gregory, the twins' lanky, fair-haired cousin, stepped silently out from behind another tree and folded in with them, and Ulf hopped over a white picket fence and to dance his jittery way backward up the sidewalk, laughing wildly until Rafe cuffed him to the rear. They wore their usual uniform of boots, black jeans, t-shirts, and assorted tattoos. Rafe had his sleeves rolled up to show off his biceps. My bodyguards, Vivian thought. Saw your mother's going to Tooley's bar with Gabriel last night, Finn said. She was all over him. His lips sketched a spiteful, thin leer, and his eyes narrowed expectantly. Vivian bristled, but she wasn't going to say anything. "Yeah, Astrid wasn't far behind," said Rafe, and she looked pissed. He laughed. "Hey, leave my mom out of this," Ulf piped up. So that's who they were fighting over, Vivian thought. Gabriel. That was disgusting. He was only 24 and full of himself, from what she could tell. Rafe took the parcel he carried out from beneath his arm. Vivian heard Ulf giggle. Rafe pulled at the knotted string to loosen it. His eyes were more red than brown when he glanced up at her, a wicked grin playing about his lips. And Vivian knew he was up to mischief. "Vivian, I'd like to give you my heart," Rafe said, suddenly serious, then immediately grinning again. "But since that might be inconvenient, I've brought you someone else's." The newspaper unrolled and he slapped a brown, slimy gob down on the sidewalk. "Rafe!" She looked around wildly, hoping no neighbors were in sight. "What the hell are you up to?" The five were helpless with laughter. Vivian grabbed the newspaper from Rafe's hand and scooped up the mess. "Give you my heart." He bent over, laughing again. Where could she put this? Where was the body? She started to rewrap the disgusting trophy, then, "Rafe, you jerk!" she cried. "This is a sheep's heart!" More howls of laughter exploded from the five. She didn't know whether to be angry or relieved. "You were over at Uncle Rudy's store, weren't you?" Rudy was a meat cutter at Safeway. When no one answered her, she growled and flung the whole package at Rafe's face. That sent the others off even worse. Ulf had tears in his eyes. She turned and left them, but they followed at a distance anyway, and she heard their bursting laughter all the way to school. Mom thinks the five have learned their lesson, Vivian thought. "Ha!" she said out loud. When Axel had come home from jail, her father had passed judgment swiftly. The punishment for endangering the pack was death. Vivian couldn't save Axel, but she pleaded with her father for the five. They were just kids, like her. They had only killed to prove the witness was wrong and protect the secret of the pack. They wouldn't do it again. So Ivan Gadillion made them beg for forgiveness of the moon and run the trial of the Fang down a narrow path lined with the pack in their fur, and all could take their bites. Some said that he let the five off too lightly, although they licked their wounds for weeks. Maybe those people were right. Vivian hadn't quite trusted the five ever since. It wasn't until almost lunchtime that Vivian remembered that she wanted to track down Aiden Teague. Yeah, why don't I have a look at this poet, she told herself. See if I like him writing about things he shouldn't know about. What was better than sitting around being miserable? Where should she look? She decided to ask her art teacher. He was one of the advisors to the trumpet. "Oh yeah, he's a junior," Mr. Antony said, shaking his brushes out over the art room's sink. "How would I find him?" Vivian asked. "Well, if you hang around for another half an hour until second lunch, all you'll have to do is look out that window. He hangs out with his friends in the quadrangle under those arches over there." He pointed with the brushes to the section of the covered walkway that ran around the perimeter of the square courtyard. "What does he look like?" "Oh, I don't know. He's tall. Bohemian." Whatever that means, she thought. Mr. Antony must have noticed her blank look. You know, a throwback to the 60s. Jeans and beads. An MTV hippie. The way he said that made her suspect that he thought he'd been the real thing at one time. Oh, I know, the teacher added. He was wearing this flowery shirt this morning. Lots of yellow and blue. It made me smile. Listen, I've got to grab a sandwich. Close the door when you leave. Sure. Luckily, she'd brought her lunch with her. She relaxed on a warm windowsill and chewed on the piece of steak while she waited. Groups of kids were scattered around the quad, eating, talking, and sunbathing. Some of the boys had their shirts off, their flesh golden and slick as if they'd swallowed the sun. They were sweet to look upon. Her eyes lingered on them tenderly as she bit into her meat. At the next bell, the shift changed. Kids reluctantly scooped up their t-shirts, soda cans, and books and hurried to class, while others hardly distinguishable from them took their places. I'll be late to French, Vivian thought. It didn't matter. The teacher loved her. She had a perfect accent. Vivian sat upright and her hands kneaded her empty lunch bag. She kept her eyes on the arches. Two young men walked into view. One had dark, shoulder-length hair and wore a flowered shirt. That must be him, she thought. Another boy joined them, then a girl. They stood laughing under the canopy, the shadow hiding their faces. So that's you, poet boy, Vivian thought. But she couldn't see him clearly. She wanted a closer look. Why am I bothering? She asked herself as she went through the side door. Because I'm a pirate of the night, and I want to see who's trespassing in my territory, she answered. But maybe he was one of her kind, from some other pack. Or maybe he just knows too much, she thought. She laughed aloud at her melodramatic thoughts as she crossed the grass. A spotty 10th grader eyed her curiously. The sun was hot, so she peeled off her shirt to reveal the tank top underneath. Shall I only have a look, or will I say something? She wondered. Oh, I loved your poem. Instantly, she felt like playing wicked games. She put a sway in her walk. Maybe I'll make him look. The boy to Aiden's left noticed her first. He was a burly blonde with a good-natured face and eyes that glazed over slightly at her approach. Vivian couldn't resist. She winked, and his cheeks turned pink. It was so easy. The other kid, wearing some kind of funny lopsided haircut, kept on yakking away, but the girl looked over and wrinkled her nose. She was small, with a close-cropped dark hair, the sort of girl that wore black stockings even on days like these. I'll put a few more runs in those tights, honey, if you look at me like that again, Vivian promised silently. Then Aiden Teague turned around to see what had captured his friend's attention. The crystal studs in his left ear reflected the sun in a burst of rainbow, and his slow, easy smile sent a shock through her. She was staring, she knew, but his face was delicious. His eyes were amused and dreamy, as if observing life from outside and finding it vaguely funny. He seemed languid, not intense like the five, those jangly, nervy, twitchy, squirmy, fighting, snapping, sharp-edged creatures who demanded so much from her. She noticed his tall dancer's frame and his long-fingered hands, and the thought crossed her mind that she would enjoy him touching her. "Do I know you?" he asked. He waited expectantly, a bemused look on his face. And that is the end of Chapter 2, ladies and gentlemen. Next week we will pick up again on the book, and as I said, I will not be on for the rest of the week, but you can look forward to a video log that I will be posting all at once on approximately Saturday next week. So, that was me. This is Emmy Reads to Your Face, and I am really glad that I'm done with this. I'm just kidding. I guess we'll just see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Bye!